Hey Amarillo, I'm Jason Boyett, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. This episode of Hey Amarillo is supported by the Shops at Wolflin Square, which is celebrating 60 years and 4 generations of local ownership and management. Wolflin Square itself is a shopping center where most of the tenants are local. In fact, you've heard several of those entrepreneurs interviewed on this podcast. These shops attract thousands of shoppers every day. The management works really hard to make sure every tenant succeeds, with a regular schedule of community events throughout the year, including the Christmas Open House, which is this Thursday, November 14th from 4 to 8 p.m. You can learn more by visiting wolflinsquare.com or visit any of the shops at Wolflin Square. Today's guest is Abby Moldenhauer. Abby is the owner-operator of Flying Fitness, an aerial art studio here in Amarillo. And if the phrase aerial arts doesn't ring a bell for you, think of Cirque du Soleil performers who wrap themselves in silk fabrics and do tricks and routines up in the air. Now imagine learning to do that yourself. That's what Abby teaches, and she's an expert in it because she literally used to perform in the circus. She went to school for it. She rode on elephants, she traveled from town to town on an actual circus train, and she grew up in Canyon, Texas. So how does somebody from Canyon end up in that kind of career? And why did she come back to this area to open a gym? That's her story. It's a fascinating and dramatic one. And I'm honored to have it here on the podcast. So here's Abby Moldenhauer. Abby Moldenhauer, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to have you. I know a little bit about your story. And that's obviously what we want to talk about, but I want to start with you the same way I start with all my guests, and that's just to ask how you ended up in this area to start with. Like what's the original story that brought you here?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually originally from Canyon.
Okay.
And go Eagles, right?
Yeah.
13 years, preschool on up. And all my family's here in the area. After that, after graduating, I graduated in 2000.
Okay.
And went to Amarillo College, messed around with that for about a year, and then bounced out of this area.
Yeah. Did you know what you wanted to do when you graduated? Like, did you have a plan?
Yes, I had a plan.
What was it? And are you still doing the same plan?
Yes,
right?
I am.
Okay.
I am. Yeah. I had a plan to leave and to come home when I was around 32, 33 years old. And finally get a degree and start a gym, a fitness gym.
So that was something that was on your mind.
That was always
from the
on my mind from the beginning, yeah.
Okay.
And I wanted to come back to the area to be able to be with my parents as they get older and, go off and have fun first. And I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Philmont Scout Ranch, and I worked there for a couple of years. Did all kinds of stuff there. I was a bear researcher.
Okay.
And there was
I want to know what that was like there.
Yeah, it was.
What did you do? Like go out and look for scat and stuff like that,
Yes,
or did you?
Exactly. Yeah. So we taught people about bear procedures and policies, and educated the staff and the campers about that. And we had a really unique job in the fact that I had a partner, and he had a biology degree, and so I kind of worked underneath him. And he had a master's degree, and we had access to the entire ranch.
Okay.
So we had a truck, and we were able to go to every single camp. We would do campsite searches to make sure people were doing what they needed to do.
Keeping their food put up.
Yes, exactly.
And did you have a connection to scouting?
Yes, so I was an explorer growing up in high school, and I actually went to Philmont as a camper. And I did that through the Boy Scouts. And yeah, it was great.
As someone who has researched bears in that area, are there more bears than we think?
Yes, there are.
Than we see or encounter? Because a lot of people in that area have seen bears. It's not uncommon.
No, it's not. And that's another thing is they don't live by borders. Mm-hmm. And
they don't just stay within the border of Philmont or anything like that.
Exactly. And that was one of our duties is that we had to sometimes trap the bears and relocate them if they were a problem bear, but it only bought us time because the bears are very smart. They just come right back. But a lot of people don't realize what bears can smell, what would be considered a smellable. And when you go camping, that's why it's important to watch where you camp, because you never know what was dropped on the ground,
Right.
who cooked what where.
What remains in your clothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The chapstick that you forgot, even the batteries from your camera, they are made with a beef byproduct.
Interesting.
So bears are very attracted to that.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yes. And we also helped all of the wildlife on the ranch. So if there was a mountain lion sighting, we would have to deal with that. One year there was a mountain lion was in the area and was stalking campers, and we had to deal with that, me and my partner. And that at the time, I wanted to be a wildlife manager.
Okay, I was going to say, did you have an interest in biology or anything like that?
I did. And so that was my interest. And when I was at Amarillo College, that is what I went for, was wildlife management.
Okay.
That soon switched. And, after Philmont, after those days, I actually was part of their restoration crew also after their big O'Neill complex fire that was there. And we got Sawyer certified, and that's where you learn to, handle a chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolfer certified, which is like a kind of the equivalent of wilderness EMT. And so just kind of real big into the wilderness and everything. And we did some restoration on the mountainside so that it would help with mudslides.
Okay, after the burn scar and all that stuff.
Yes, exactly. And we did phases of that restoration. The first phase was controlling the erosion. The second phase was the reseeding. And that was a complex phase as well, because people don't realize that there's a film of wax that comes onto the soil. And you have to break that up so that the seed can break through there.
Can implant itself.
Yeah. And that wax comes from the trees. And so we had to break up that soil around the mountainsides and reseed. And it was a whole process. So that's why I was able to stay there all year long. So in the on season, I was the bear researcher. In the off season, me and my partner and a crew of people that were hand selected got to be on this restoration crew on the off season.
Okay.
And living at Philmont is incredible.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But that's what led me into living in Taos. And I lived in Taos for 5 years. And that's where I was introduced to the aerial arts.
Okay.
And so I was a big rock climber. So I was already kind of, I guess, physically fit, going into the aerial arts. And me and my friends traveled an hour to learn the aerial arts in Santa Fe. And our boyfriends had a band. And so we all just kind of joined together, and we would perform with the band. It was fun.
Like doing the aerial arts while the band
we would do aerial arts while they were doing the band, and we threw festivals in Taos and everything. It was a grand time. And we would travel all over and play. And we even, we started doing professional things with like String Cheese Incident.
Yeah.
I got to play at the Red Rocks Amphitheater. That's one place people would know offhand.
Right.
Is Red Rocks. And it was an amazing experience.
Were you an athletic kid? Like,
yes.
Discovering that you were good at aerial arts, in your 20s, did that feel like the right kind of progression? Or had you any...
I wanted that. I always wanted to dance or do gymnastics, but, we just never really were a family that really did that. I was a band kid.
Okay.
We could do one thing, and I appreciate that now as an adult, why my parents didn't run me around like some people do. But yeah, and so I think that's why I went full force into it. And I was an athletic child and kid. I was very active.
So most of the aerial arts, was it, you consider it self-taught, or was there a certain program or style or something that you were kind of digging into? Yeah,
totally. So, when I was in Taos, I trained there for a couple of years. And after that, I knew I wanted to go more professional with it. Okay. We were doing the festival circuits, and we were performing with String Cheese all over the place. And it was amazing. And got to meet lots of cool people and experience things. But then I knew I wanted to go further with that. And that's when I seeked out a different, aerial program, like a legit, professional program.
Okay.
And I found one in Vermont, and it was at the New England Center for the Circus Arts. And that was with, I trained with the Gemini twins. They were with the Cirque du Soleil.
Okay.
And so they were the original trapeze act with Saltimbanco, which is a Cirque du Soleil show.
Okay.
And so they built this school in Brattleboro, Vermont. And
were there other schools like it?
there really weren't. There was like a couple, one in LA, one in Vermont, and then I think maybe one in Florida.
Okay.
And the Gemini twins, they would do some workshops in Colorado, and that's kind of close to us. And so I went to the aerial festival and kind of got to know them. And that's when I decided to go train with them in Vermont. And so I went there and did their program for 2 years.
Did you have, like, wanting to take a more legit path into that specialty, a very specialized skill? Like, did you have a goal? Did you want to end up performing in something like Cirque du Soleil or the circus? Was that sort of the obvious endpoint, or did you have something else in mind?
Yes, that was definitely the goal.
Okay.
In Taos, I had sat myself down and I was like, okay, where do I need to go from here? And that's when I made the next plan forward.
Okay.
And so I seeked that out, and you had to audition to get into this school.
Sure.
And so I did get in, and I went for a year. And then after that, I got contracted with Ringling Bros right away.
Okay. They're probably looking for graduates of programs like that.
They were.
Right?
And that's actually how it happened. They actually called the school, and the school referred me. They asked me to do that. And so that I went off to Ringling Bros, and it was great. And what's interesting about Ringling is they've got 3 different units. I was on the red unit. That's a 3-ring circus, and we live on the train.
Okay.
We travel.
It's an actual circus train going from town to town.
Yes. And it's funny because I remember as a kid traveling somewhere with my parents and seeing the circus train and people on the vestibule, what I know is now the vestibule, and they were the circus performers waving at us. And then later down in life, I was that person waving down in the cities at people. It was great.
So what's funny about that is that, like, that literally is a cliche, that somebody runs off to join the circus. And, like, that was your career, something you did very intentionally. Maybe not the running off part, but, like, you wanted to be in the circus. You trained to be in the circus. And that feels like a world that is just so mysterious to people. We only see the performance side of it. And it's all spectacle and flash. I wonder if you can talk about what it's like as a day-to-day performer.
That's a great question.
I mean, because I can imagine it's like being an athlete. Like, we see, NFL guys playing for 2 or 3 hours on a Sunday, and we don't realize all the other stuff between it that they're doing. So what's it like, on the other side of things?
Yeah, that's funny. Because I always say it's, grit and glitter. Because, and that's why they call them mud shows. Because, you see, the performers are actually going from the caravans, or, what we call RVs here.
Right.
To the tent. But we're stomping in mud to get to this, to the stage, where the audience just sees the glitter and the rhinestones and the feathers, and that's for 5 minutes when, we spend hours on hours training. It's a lifestyle. It really is a lifestyle.
Did it meet your expectations? Like, if it was something you were training to do and you wanted to do, then once you got there, was it what you thought it was going to be?
It really kind of was. I didn't really know what to expect, but I had what I consider an advantage of knowing what real life was. Versus going into there's some people that were born into it.
Okay, yeah,
and
like
all they know is
generational circus
they're
families.
generational.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty lucky or blessed in that way that I kind of knew both sides of that.
Okay.
Because they don't really know. Social media has helped now. They know the real world. Yeah, and they know the real world. But back, really you're kind of stuck in this your own little world. And it is this, you forget that, no, not everybody is this high athletic, beautiful, amazing, talented person.
Right.
And so you kind of get drowned into that.
Okay.
And
you're surrounded by people who just can do almost anything, right?
And that is why when you leave that, there's a transition that happens.
Okay.
There's a kind of a grieving, and there's like you don't know how to kind of handle the world for really what it is.
Normal people with regular talents.
And regular working.
Yeah, 9 to 5 sort of thing. Tell me what you did. What kinds of performing did you do with the circus?
So I was primarily an aerialist. When I went to school, my major was trapeze. But, when I went to get jobs and everything, they just wanted aerial silk all the time. I don't know if that was because it was trending at the time or it was popular, but really I think it was because of the rigging. Because with an aerial silk, you have one rig, one point.
Okay.
It's very easy to rig versus a trapeze where you have to have two rigging points and have to get them balanced and even. And so for me, I kind of learned that pretty quickly because one of my best friends was a trapeze artist that did trapeze as her primary thing. And it was very difficult for her to have to rig all the time like that. And so I learned that fabric was easy. They wanted it. And so it became really the primary thing that I would perform. And that's the fabric that hangs down.
Right. Yeah. So for people that don't know, when you say aerial silks and they can't picture what that is, explain what it is.
Yes. So that's the fabric that hangs from the ceiling, and you learn to climb it, and you learn intricate wraps, and you learn how to drop and do flips and poses.
Okay.
And it's usually, 20 feet plus in the sky.
The people who do it make it look really, really easy.
Yes.
I imagine that is not the case.
No.
And so tell me like what is happening. What kinds of muscles do you have to develop? Like what kinds of skills do you have to have in order to make that look so seamless and easy?
Definitely. I always tell my students, we train to smile while we're like, this hurts. This is crazy, But really and truly, you train your core muscles to a point where it's all calisthenics, really, where you can hang in the sky for 10 minutes and not be phased doing, flipping around and lifting your legs over your head.
Or so getting dizzy or dealing with blood rushing to your head, any of those things.
Yeah. And there's a whole training that goes into being able to deal with that.
I know that because of your work with aerial silks, you also did a few other things circus related, some involving elephants. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. When I was it wasn't just Ringling, but I use them as an example because people know them. I rode the circus elephants during their act. And that's also one of the places where I kind of woke up to the animal kind of welfare in the world.
Which has always been sort of maybe a growing concern about the circus.
Yes.
Some people have those questions.
Yeah, and the elephants are amazing. They are super smart. They are very loving, and they want to be loved. They want to have a relationship. They're like relationship animals. It's interesting. Kind of like dogs,
like dogs, but 4,000 pounds.
Yes, exactly. And it was really fun learning how to be hoisted up onto them, because that's what it is. They bend over and you step on their arm and they lift you up onto their back. So it's really fun. And they always have the aerialists. The aerialists are usually the ones riding the elephants.
Because you're okay standing 15 feet in the air.
Exactly. And doing that kind of thing. So if you see someone riding an elephant, they're probably an aerialist. But, Ringling took really good care of their elephants. And I've been with other circuses where I've seen the opposite. And it's just like any other industry where you have the good and you have the bad. The elephants are something else. I have a funny story about that, learning a very good lesson about the elephants. I was in backstage and I was kind of new at the time. And I was walking backstage behind a curtain and kind of came to the end. I got knocked but on my shoulder, didn't know what hit me. It flew. I feel like I flew 20 feet, but I probably flew probably nothing at all. I don't know. But I leapt a couple of feet, and the elephant pack came. It was the elephant pack came. It didn't even faze them.
Just on the other side of a curtain?
They were on the other side. They were just walking through, and after their rehearsal, and just the swipe of their leg walking hit me. But it taught me a lesson. You better look on what's on the other side of that curtain.
What was a day like, when you're performing like that? Maybe you're doing, a show from 7 to 9 or 7 to 10. Like, what are you doing the rest of the time?
Yeah. It's a really big self kind of industry, if you will. Like you have to train a lot. You have to really take care of yourself a lot. You have to make sure that you're resting well. Training, so you're training all the time. If you're not training, you're learning something new. So And I'll use, Ringling as an example. We were usually in a city for a week, which was really nice because we were able to have more downtime.
Okay.
But we were stopped on the train tracks, and having a taxi come get you was very difficult. Okay.
You're not towing a bunch of cars behind you, right?
Yeah,
So
no. And you're like, GPS coordinate, good luck finding me. And we would have grocery runs every week. So they would take us, to a grocery store every week. And being an aerialist, I had a stateroom in the train. So I didn't have to share my space, and I had a bigger space. And so I could fit a yoga mat in there. I had a top bunk and a table underneath that could be a bed if you wanted. So I had a good space, really. And it was interesting because we had rehearsals all the time and meetings a lot. Like I said, it's a lifestyle. So it's not a lot of go off and do for yourself type of thing. You're very much saturated in the culture.
Okay.
And it's a lot of foreign people. Like when I was at Ringling Brothers, I was number 2 American.
Okay.
So the rest of the people were all foreigners.
Right. So a lot of other languages being spoken, a lot of diversity there.
Yeah, lots of diversity.
So I know you toured for a while, but I know that wasn't the extent of what you did as a performer, an aerialist. And so tell me how that side of your career sort of evolved over the years.
Yeah, definitely. So I've done all kinds of performing. I had an agent and everything, and I did a lot of corporate gigs and events, which is what we do here in Amarillo. We do it still with my team. I don't do it, but my team does it. But at the time, let's say I kind of left the circus scene a little bit, and my agent, I got a job at, let's say, I'll give an example. I was supposed to go to India on my last run before I came back here, but before that I went to Atlantic City, and I worked at a resort, like a casino. It was Resorts Casino is what it was called. And
they had a show there.
Yes,
just in the same place every night.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yep. And what was cool is the producer I worked for, he was producing several shows. There was a tent outside of the casino, like a real circus tent. And that was like a family-oriented show. And so a lot of us, we did that show during the day. And then at night, we did a show in the casino. And it was more of a risque show.
Got it.
Okay. And so we did that. That's also where, so after that is when I was supposed to go to India, but that's when I was carjacked.
Right. So I want to get to that story. Before we do that, tell me a little bit about the difference between being in a traveling group of performers like the circus on the train and then being in a stationary one.
Yeah.
And sort of how the lifestyle differs, or maybe just how you can approach training and relaxing and things like that.
Exactly. It's funny you bring this up because there are some circuses I worked on where we had 1-day stands, and that's what we call them. Is like Ringling was usually a 7-day stand. Other circuses were 1 to 2 days, and those were brutal, very brutal. It means you're packing up the tent every night after the show, traveling through the night, getting a few hours of sleep, putting up the tent, and then trying to perform your best,
right?
And then trying to live life like that. And I think that's probably why I took a break from that kind of circus scene for a while and went and was kind of looking for something different. And it was great because it was after Ringling when I went to Atlantic City. They put us up in a condo, and that was really luxury. It was great. It was right by the ocean.
Okay.
And there was a lot of downtime. We could, go walking around the beach or do whatever we wanted. And they soon moved us into the casino, and we were living in the casino. And that even got more luxury, in my opinion, because we got the staff buffet. Okay. And it was great. Okay. Really good food.
I was going to say, is that as good as it may sound to some people that you just live permanently in a resort?
Yeah, it was great.
Okay.
Because you get full access to the spa.
Okay.
And no one ever used the spa except for me. And so I would have this whole entire spa by myself. And that's how I would spend my day, and then, go perform. And so, like I said, it was a lot about taking care of yourself, making sure you're well rested. That's how I lived. Now, I did work with a lot of people, for instance, the Russians. I don't know how they do it, but they're super high Class A, Class 1 performers, acrobats, but they could get drunk and drink and, and then do it all again the next day.
Sounds like a big risk if you're living in a casino, that it makes that really easy.
Yes, and on the train car, on the train rides, because we'd be on the train sometimes for 3 days at a time, not off the train. Like we would be on the train for 3 days, getting to the next place, which was great. But
okay, so you mentioned the carjacking, and I know that's a significant part of your story. So could you tell me what happened, as much as you're comfortable, and like what the impact of that was?
Sure, yeah. So, you're always looking for the next job. So it's kind of like a hustle industry. So
it's not going to last forever. You're not going to be doing this show for 20 years.
No. And so, and you want the next job after, because they're all like contract jobs. Maybe they're 6 months, maybe they're a year. Ringling was a 2-year contract. Some of them are 6 weeks. You just never know what length of contract you're going to get. So the next I was already contracted into the next job after Atlantic City. I was supposed to go to India. After India is when I planned on coming back here and opening up Flying Fitness.
All right, so that India was going to be your last stop, I guess.
Yeah, that was going to be my last hoorah. And I was going to still perform, but not as much. I was going to, be based here, be more local here, and, kind of settle down a little bit.
Okay.
But that didn't happen. Well, it kind of happened, but I was forced into it because when I was in Atlantic City, I got carjacked. I was actually in the process of moving to New York City because I had like 2 months before I went to India.
Okay.
And so I had a place in New York City already, and I was moving my things back and forth. And so I had a rental car, and I got carjacked. This guy, and later on, I knew what he was not carjacking me. He was trying to
assault you?
Yeah, assault me and take me and
was
do
it
whatever.
Like late at night in the casino parking lot, or what was the scenario?
No, it was in the morning.
Wow.
Early in the morning, at the casino parking lot. Yeah, and he was a known pimp, I guess. I later found out, and he drove down to the ocean. I ended up having to like fight my way out of the car. And because I was so agile, I was able to like zigzag my way, because he was trying to hit me with a car. And I kind of laugh about it now, but it took a long time to get over, what I mean? But I'm just, it's baffling now to think about, because it's a whole nother time ago, really. But so I got away, and he ended up zooming off the curb, jumping off the curb with the car, because I like bolted off the other way, because somebody was like, hey, and he saw that person, and so that scared him, and he left, and he ended up running the car into a house.
Wow.
Because I think he overcorrected. Yeah. And because of the CCTV that was all over Atlantic City, he was caught in an old folks' home. I think they broke his wrist. They put the dog on him. He tried to sue the police because the dog bit him. Mm-hmm. These are all things I've heard after, but he did go to prison for a year and a half.
And you escaped, but you were injured in the process, right?
Yes. I had to fight my way out. I got a lot of herniations in my back and my neck. Okay. And that caused a lot of tissue damage as well. And it just took a lot of time healing from that. I'm still healing from it, actually. I still really can't. My back is really injured.
Did you know at the time that was going to effectively end your career? Or did you just think, well, I'm kind of sore from this. I'll get over this?
I was about to go to India, so the decision had to be made very quickly. And so I didn't have a lot of time to like grieve on that, I guess, or think about it. And so I had to make the decision to find a replacement. I didn't have to, but out of respect for the agency, I just did. And I found a replacement. And I spent another year in Atlantic City thinking that I had to go to trial and stuff, because I've never done this. I've never
testify against him.
Yes, but I didn't have to be there, and I wish I had known that, because I would have left immediately. But later on, I did come back here. This was back in like 2013. Just about to be 2014. You
talked about the grieving process of it. Mm-hmm. Like when your career has been defined by your athletic ability, your ability to do these, super impressive feats of agility and strength and all that stuff. And then you're injured and you can't do that. Like, did you know immediately that, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore? And did you have to come to terms with that? I mean, that kind of changes what you're known for when you're identified by your ability to do these, circus stunts and things like that.
It's a good question because, yes, the grieving process, I'd never gone through anything like that in my life. They say there are stages of grieving. Mm-hmm. You're angry, and then you come to this like sad, and then this acceptance, and then there's a lot of stages of grieving because it took a lot to get where I was with the performing. And when they say blood, sweat, and tears, that is no joke at all. And the money and the time that you spend doing something like that, and just the physicalness of that. There's a reason why you do it when you're young. Mm-hmm. And that's why when I got injured, I was just like, there's not really, I didn't really want to even try to come back from it.
How old were you at the time?
When that happened, I was early 30s.
Okay. And so I
was right past my prime.
You didn't necessarily think, oh, I can rehab my way
I
back
didn't.
into
I
the
didn't.
silks.
I knew I could, but I didn't want to.
Okay.
Because I knew what it was going to take.
And you knew you had a plan for what was next anyway.
I
it just
did.
kind of compressed that timeline.
Right. That's it. And so I felt like it was time to go on and do the other things that was on my list.
Okay. So I want to talk about that. So you had planned to come back here. You had thought you wanted to open up some sort of aerial fitness class. You come back to Amarillo. Was there anything happening like that at the time? Like, was that a brand new idea that came here?
It was. And, I tried for the longest time to put my aerial stuff in a different gym, and maybe I just wasn't looking at the right places, but it was very difficult. No one wanted to touch that because of the liability.
Right. They assume that it's going to be really dangerous.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, nobody else is hanging high above the ground at the gym, right?
Right. Exactly. And so that's what pushed me into having to do it on my own.
Okay.
I wanted to teach. I didn't necessarily want to own it.
Right.
I just, but really and truly, I did always plan on having my own gym. I just didn't know really what that looked like. And, but starting out, I wish I could have done it at someone else's place and built up from there.
Right. Because otherwise you just had to jump both feet into it, right?
That's it. And so I had to learn a lot going into it at first. But yeah, this is our 10th year.
Okay.
And
it's called Flying Fitness, we should say.
Yes, it's Flying Fitness. Mm-hmm. And we teach adults and students how to, be the next aerialist, the next generation of aerialists. And we try to teach everyday people how to do it because when I started, I thought it was impossible. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember going to the circus and seeing these trapeze artists thinking it was totally impossible.
And you were already a rock climber though, right? Yes. Like you had the mental constitution to do something different like that.
Right. Yeah, the core strength.
Right.
Because there's a certain level of strength that you have, the pulling strength, the calisthenics, being able to pull up. A lot of people can't pull up. Mm-hmm. And, but it came natural to me. It always kind of did.
A lot of people maybe who would find what you do interesting don't necessarily want to be an aerialist in the circus. I would imagine that a lot of the members of your gym,
right? And I had to remember
they're
that.
like they're bankers or they're lawyers or something like that. So tell me, like, what are they getting out of it?
Yeah,
and why are they doing that instead of running on the treadmill at the Gold's Gym or someplace like that?
Well, it's so funny you asked that because I remember when I was in circus school, we would come to our classes and we were like trying to be professional. Mm-hmm. We were there to be pros, and we were in the professional program. And then they would have weekly classes and we would see local people come and I would think, why on earth are they doing this? This is way too hard.
That's somebody's mom hanging by her ankle over there. Like, why is she doing that?
And it's way too hard to just do for fun, I thought. I was like, wow. But now I get it. I get it because it gets you in super shape. Mm-hmm. It's super fun. You hardly realize that you're working out because you're constantly learning. And it's really big on helping the brain strengthen, and it fights against all those brain diseases that you hear about because it uses cross patterns. Yeah,
so it's not something like you start running on a treadmill, you don't really have to think about where your foot placement is every time you take a step. But if you're doing, some sort of aerial routine, everything is a thought. Like you've got to put your hand in a certain way, right?
Exactly. You have to be very cognitive of what you're doing. And I always talk to my students about it. It's almost like taking a test sometimes, because you really have to think and be cautious of what you're doing. And that's why it can be so beneficial. Gaining people's self-discipline. It really helps people to gain self-discipline, self-awareness.
How many clients do you have? Like what's the size of your gym? Are you having multiple classes a day? Is it, I can imagine that you can't have, 15 people all trying to use the same silks. And so there's some built-in limitations to it. Tell me how that works.
And that's also what makes us unique from any kind of like gym, if you will say. We're kind of classified as a boutique fitness.
Okay.
And that's because we have limited spots. And we have limited spots not because of the spacing necessarily, but because of safety. And our number one thing at the studio is safety. It's not about, like I always say, it's not about the Instagram picture or anything like that. It's about safety first. And because I'm a professional, I come from the professional side of it, not just from like being fun. So I'm more of a technique coach, if you will. And so that's kind of where we come from.
Is the coaching hard for you at this point because you can't necessarily climb up and show them something? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, when I first was thinking about how am I going to do this if I can't even hardly stand very much right now, I had to learn how to teach with my words.
Okay.
And so I got really good with teaching with my words. And, as a high athlete, all of my coaches, none of them showed us how to do something because they're retired athletes. They're not going to show you a flip, how to do something. So they have to be really good at explaining things and teaching with words and being very clear on words. It forced me to learn to do that. And so, I just use my words.
Okay. I want you to give to think of my listeners, I want you to give the sales pitch for someone who is a gym goer. Maybe they've done, the aerobics classes, or they've done CrossFit, or they've done, they like to run on a treadmill or whatever. Yeah. Like what is the thing that they're not thinking about that you would say, this is why you should try aerials?
I would say, are you tired of the boring treadmill walk or run? Are you tired of going to the gym and pumping the same iron every single day? Come try something new, and you're going to learn something new all the time and be challenged, and you're going to be stimulated. Your mind and your body is going to be stimulated. And there's like no end to it.
Okay.
And it's super fun.
Because you're not going to master it.
No.
You can always get better at it.
You can always get better, and you can always find new things to learn.
Are you surprised to find yourself in like an entrepreneurial position, owning a business, maybe not surprised to be back in this area because that was part of your plan, but like, is the place where you have gotten and where your gym is still part of that plan, or are you a little bit surprised?
Yeah. So growing up, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. In high school, we had the business program, and I was part of that. I got to leave school early, and they taught us about business and things like that. I always knew I wanted to own my own business. I watched my dad do that and everything, and I always had plans to have a gym. I just didn't know that it was going to be an aerial gym. That kind of morphed over time. And that's why I can say that I've kind of done most of the things on my list. Now, I didn't get a degree in college. That was one of my degrees, but I'll have to say I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah, well, you got a circus degree, right?
That's it. And the way they're doing college nowadays, I'm glad I avoided that. But, I have other expectations and other things on my list that I'm actually currently working on now. And we'll see what the future unfolds.
Tell me why you came back here.
Yeah.
I imagine you could have, you've been to a lot of places.
Yes.
You could have done what you're doing now in bigger cities or places where it's maybe less outside the mainstream. So why come back here?
I ask myself that so many times a week, but the real reason is because my family's here. I want to be here for my folks when they get older, and I want to be here with my grandmother while she's still here. And I want to give this area something that we didn't have when I grew up. If people like me don't have things like this, we'll never have them.
Right.
And I'm willing to take that pay cut because, if I were in some other area, I could probably, have more clients or more students and things like this.
But you might not be the only one there.
That's right. And that's right. And we're very unique here. And I'm okay with being what we are here. And I love this area. I really do.
This episode of Hey Amarillo is supported by Lazy Boy Home Furnishings in Amarillo. You know Lazy Boy is a national brand, but its Amarillo store is independently owned and operated by the Hawkins family who live right here in town. And here's the thing, they offer a lot more than just recliners. Amarillo's locally owned Lazy Boy Home Furnishings has a ton of products in stock. They're all ready to take home or deliver today. So go visit the Lazy Boy of Amarillo showroom at 3636 Soncy. That's Lazy Boy of Amarillo at 3636 Soncy. And I also want to remind you about the Brickley Awards from Brick and Elm magazine. This awards program is brand new for Amarillo and Canyon, and we want to acknowledge community excellence and personal accomplishments in categories that truly matter to local residents and to members of this community. The awards will be categories like Volunteer of the Year, Innovator of the Year, Entrepreneur of the Year, Nonprofit of the Year. This isn't a social media vote. It's not a popularity contest. It's our effort with Brick and Elm to recognize local organizations and individuals that deserve attention. It's all going to be based on your nominations. And after that, our committee of local leaders will evaluate the nominees and choose the winners. We'll announce these winners in our January-February issue at Brick and Elm, and then we'll celebrate them at an awards ceremony in February. I'm really excited about this program. I hope it will be very meaningful year after year, and so I want you to nominate somebody. If there's someone you think deserves to be recognized, go to brickandelm.com, look for the Brickley Awards link at the top of the page, and nominate someone no later than this Friday, November 15th. That's the deadline. brickandelm.com. Okay, I'm back with Abby Moldenhauer. Abby, this is the part of the show I call 8 Straight. 8 Straight is sponsored every week by Panhandle Plains Historical Museum in Canyon. I'm sure you're aware of it, having grown up there. It's the largest history museum in Texas, and among the unexpected elements of its collection is a seashell collection that has more than 7,000 seashells from around the world, including sand dollars, horseshoe crabs, seahorses, corals, and a lot more. So they're not always on display, but they're part of the collection at Panhandle Plains. I'm always surprised with the things that they have there,
I love that place.
whether you can see it or not. So you can learn more at panhandleplains.org. Okay, when you think of the Amarillo or Canyon area 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
A few things, but the biggest thing that comes to my mind always, honestly, is a solution for our animal welfare crisis. That's always been kind of on my forefront because growing up in Canyon, we never used to see stray animals. If we did, the dog catcher knew exactly who it belonged to and they would just take it home.
Right.
But now, you see stray dogs everywhere. And the crisis that we have is exploding. And so how can we, educate people into being, more responsible owners? I would love to somehow get this campaign going where we help people build fences.
Okay.
Like yards, like fences, because a lot of times that's just what they need. They just need some sort of a resource to keep them, happy and contained properly. That was always my issue. When I had dogs, I needed a proper space for them.
Right.
And so if we could, get some sort of campaign going that helps people build fences for themselves, for their dogs, that would be awesome.
I think a lot of people would agree that it is a problem. Whether it's dogs or cats, this neighborhood, it's cats. There's so many feral cats running around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it is a problem. It's probably a problem now that a lot of cities have. But it seems like it keeps getting worse in Amarillo. And so.
Yes, it does. It does. And I think hopefully, if we can get inflation controlled, maybe that will help a little bit. But I think it really comes down to the local side of education and enforcing laws, enforcing things. But I'd like to see this area get a little more healthy.
Yeah.
I would love to see.
Well, you're helping with that.
Yes.
Small amounts of people at a time, right?
Yeah.
Other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
Dust and fried food.
Okay. Well, both of those probably have an element of making the health worse here.
Yes.
What does this area not have enough of?
Water.
Mm-hmm.
Water. And, I live south of Canyon, and I love going out to Buffalo Lake. When it flooded was a year ago or so, that lake filled completely up. Yeah. It was beautiful.
It looked like the photos from the 50s.
It did, didn't it? It was magical. But they drained it. But then if you follow the river, the stream, it's still in some people's private area and stuff. So you just wonder, where is the water going? Why?
Right. Hopefully it's draining into the aquifer and helping replenish it. But I don't know that it replenishes as easily now as it used to.
Right, exactly. And, we're about to have to dig another well out at our house because all the overdevelopment that's occurring around us in Canyon.
Are you having to go deeper?
We're going to have to dig a whole new well. So my sister is about to have to. One of my students that lives down the street from us, she's about to have to dig another well. The water in the area is a problem. Okay,
what's your favorite local neighborhood?
Yeah, I would say anything with acreage.
Okay. So less neighborhood, more a scattering of houses in a large space, right?
Yeah. By the canyon, it's amazing out there in Sunday Canyon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some of the best home sites in the area.
They really are.
Okay, what's your favorite local restaurant?
Probably Feldman's or the Potato Factory.
Okay.
Can't go wrong with that one. As a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian.
Well, okay.
And see, there's not very many places I can eat. But he needs to have sweet potatoes, you see, and vegetarian chili.
Yeah. I understand that. The Potato Factory is an underrated place to eat because you get a lot of food.
Yes.
And it is not as expensive as other places where you're getting this giant, 4-pound potato covered with
and you can literally you can get a half a potato.
Right.
And that helps a lot with a salad.
Yeah, sure.
You got to add the salad with it.
What's the most underrated aspect of living in the Panhandle?
Yeah. People saying there's nothing to do. Mm-hmm. And I used to be one of those people. Okay. But I think, because I was thinking about this, and I think the problem is, and maybe they have this, maybe we have this, and I just don't know. But if I don't know, other people don't know. But like a local weekly paper that tells you what's going on during the week. When I lived in Taos, they had that Taos was very communal, very local, very fun, very cool. Brattleboro, Vermont, they had a local paper. They were very fun, very local, very communal. I think that's what this place needs. If we don't have it, we need it. If we have it, it needs to be talked about more.
And that's what we're trying to do, of course, with our magazine and with our weekly newsletters. But we still find people all the time who have not encountered it, don't know it exists, don't know what's happening in Amarillo, So yeah, that's always a challenge for us.
Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite local nonprofit?
I would have to say, just offhand, Gracie's Project.
Okay.
They're like super boots on the ground working for the animals. And and that really goes for all the rescuers in town, because I know a lot of them, and they might not have like a nonprofit behind them or whatever. But Gracie's Project, I would say, is the nonprofit.
Okay, great. That's a great organization. Last question. When was the last time you visited Cadillac Ranch?
Okay. This is funny. Really was this summer.
Okay.
Me and a friend went out there, and it was extremely windy. I cannot even tell you how windy it was. And I can't tell you how busy it was.
Really? Even with the wind?
Yes.
Dirt blowing around?
Yeah, it was great. Because is it the Norwegians that say there's no such thing as bad weather? Just bad clothing? That's it, yeah.
I'm not sure what the right clothing is here to protect against wind and blowing dirt, because if you're wearing like all long sleeves and stuff in the summer, you're going to get really hot.
Oh, God, I know.
But then you take it off, then you're just getting pelted.
It's terrible.
Yeah. It's easier to live in Norway, probably.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes my 8 straight questions. I like to close by asking my guests to endorse something. So what's one thing you would like listeners to know about or to experience?
I kind of want people to know more about Flying Fitness.
Okay.
We've been here for 10 years, and a lot of people, when they do approach us, they explain they have not ever heard about us. And We do local performing around town for people, for festivals and special events. We just got done with the quinceañera.
Okay.
And
that's just people saying, hey, we want to have somebody entertaining the crowd by doing your stuff.
Yes. And the money that we get paid doing that goes right back into costuming and training and training these performers. And then we also do a lot of fundraising. Like we'll do a lot of fundraiser projects. So if anyone is out there that has they're there with a good cause, we would love to be part of that.
Okay.
Because we want to serve the community. But we also, we like we were talking about earlier, we teach adults and kids the aerial arts. So.
Okay. Abby, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes the episode. I want to say thanks to Abby for the interview. You can learn more about her gym at flyingfitnesstx.com. And also check out the latest issue of Brick and Elm, where we published an article about Abby and her career. You can read that at brickandelm.com. Thanks also to the shops at Wolflin Square, Lazy Boy Home Furnishings, Brick and Elm's The Brickley Awards, and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for supporting this podcast. Thanks also to Angelina Marie for editing every week. And thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. Hey Amarillo exists on a weekly basis because of listeners like you and the local people who support it financially through patreon.com/HeyAmarillo. Hey Amarillo's executive producers include Patrick Burns, Jason Burr, Katie Linger, Corey Burns, Josh Wood, Wes Reeves, Cindy Graham, and Barbara and Jim Witten. This has been episode 378. My name is Jason Boyett, and I'll see you next week.